are you calling inferior?
What is going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel. For today's video, we're going to be checking out the Transformers Studio Series Deluxe Class Bonecrusher. Based on the original 1986 animated movie, this version of Bonecrusher is the second Constructicon required to form the mighty Devastator. And as we whack up an image of how he first appeared in the original G1 cartoon, whilst he is still easily recognisable, I've got to be honest and say, guys, that this isn't one of the better updates so far released. Unfortunately, there does appear to be some pretty big proportion issues, which just make him look kinda chunky in comparison to how thin he really was on the show. And easily one of my biggest complaints would have to be how they've designed the forearms. I thought the whole idea of these Constructicons was so that Hasbro could solely focus their efforts in really nailing the individual forms, and sadly so far that just doesn't seem to be the case at all. The one redeeming factor that this guy does have going for him though would have to be that head sculpt. That as always looks to be ripped straight out of the original G1 cartoon. And as we flip around to the back of Bonecrusher, he is stacked. Nearly all of the joints have been completely filled in, although unfortunately his back is definitely looking kind of unsightly. I'm honestly not quite sure why to begin with they never just made this a part of the upcoming Commander Class 2-pack, especially as it's already been confirmed that the forearms will be a complete separate piece. But seeing as it is only on a mushroom joint, if it really bothered you that much, then you could simply pop it clean off, which now results in a back which is surprisingly incredibly close to his animation model. Bulldozing our way through his accessories, as he is only a deluxe class, he doesn't include anything for the combined mode, but instead comes with his original G1 blaster, which has been super nicely detailed and is blast effect compatible, giving him the ability to blast through enemy Autobots. Crushing our way through this guy's posability, I've got to say that once again these Studio Series Constructicons are certainly proving to be a little divisive when it comes down to design. So to begin with, despite the head not being ball jointed, this can still look up and down and left to right. The shoulders can kick forwards, backwards and out to the side. The elbows are ball jointed so these can crunch inwards, although unfortunately again due to the design there are no wrist joints. And officially the same can also be said for the torso, although if you do take the chest piece and attach it, check this out guys, there is both a waist cut and an ab crunch. I think it seriously sucks from a design standpoint that they never found a way to make this work, because had they been able to do so, without a doubt this would have made this guy one of the most dynamic deluxes released in an incredibly long time. The hips are ball jointed, so in addition to kicking outwards, can also kick both forwards and backwards, allowing him to pull off the complete splits. The thigh can spin, the knee can bend there to 90, and then finally the ankles can rock inwards. But to see what devastation this guy can really cause, let's now put him through the pose test. Firing through some robot mode size comparisons, on the right hand side is the Combiner Wars version of Bonecrusher. Now there is roughly a 10-year difference between these two, and I'm gonna be brutally honest. For those of you who already own that Combiner Wars Devastator, then right now I really don't see the need to upgrade to these Studio Series Constructicons, because at least when in robot mode, I really do think this guy here looks so much better. Next up is the Studio Series 86 Commander Class Optimus Prime, and I will say that one area that the new Studio Series Constructicons most definitely do improve upon would be scale, because sadly some of those Combiner Wars releases were just way too big in comparison to the likes of this guy. Here is how he stacks up against the Autobot Constructicon Road Hauler, and I've got to say that I am much preferring the darker shade of green of this guy in comparison here to Bonecrusher. Voyager Class Scrapper, and to go back to a point that I did make in this guy's review, I really don't think there was any need at all for him to be made as a Voyager class, because in comparison to this guy he actually appears to be slightly shorter, and when it comes down to plastic density, this one here, despite only being a deluxe class, is completely filled in front side to back, whereas unfortunately the same cannot be said for this guy. Optimus Prime's right hand man, the 86 movie Ironhide, then finally deluxe class Bumblebee.
Constructicons, transform! Phase 1!
So, for the first step, take the shoulder and spin this upwards. You'll now rotate inwards by making use out of the elbow, and the forearm is now going to come down and will attach into the back of the shoulder. So again guys, be sure to do the same for the second side. Spin upwards at the shoulder, rotate inwards at the elbow, take the forearm and proceed to snap this here into place. For the next step, we can now take the chest piece and fold this section forwards. You'll now spin to the side where you can first of all take this compartment. This section is going to hinge over the top of the head, and the same can also be said for the elbow of Devastator. Fold that there all the way to the back. We are now going to make use out of that fake ab crunch. This section is going to fold forwards, and at the same time the top half is going to fold backwards. Eventually you should be left with something that right now is looking exactly like this. We can now take the head of the robot mode and flip it all the way to the front and do pretty much exactly the same here for the shoulders. So pull these here inwards until these do snap into place, and again be sure to do the same for the second side. Take that shoulder joint and proceed to hinge this all the way into the center until eventually both halves can combine directly down the middle. As for the next step, we can now take the upper half and combine it along with the ab crunch. You'll now take this section, fold this forwards, spin here to the side where we can now take the elbow of Devastator and fold this here to the underside. Once completed, that right there guys is the entire upper torso now fully transformed. As for the next step, we can now take this section and proceed to fold this here backwards. You'll now take the tips and the back part of the feet and snap these here into the center. So again, do the same here for the second side. What you'll then do is now flip to the underside, as we are now going to take the legs and snap these into what was originally the elbow of Devastator. So again, be sure to do the same here for that second side. Once that's completed, we can now come in close here to the chest piece. As firstly, this section is going to slide backwards. You'll then make use out of this additional hinge joint, slide this upwards, and then you'll take the main bucket itself and slide this backwards. That tab is now going to slide into that slot. And that right there guys is the transformation now completely complete. Devastating his way through the battlefield of Autobot City, here is Bonecrusher now fully transformed into a bulldozer, which, unlike the robot mode, is looking to be spot on to his animation model, and has been completely filled in, front, side to back. There are some great mechanical details sculpted throughout the vehicle, and it's kind of making me hope that in the future, we can see some of these Constructicons repainted to better match the look of the original G1 toys. My only complaint with this mode would have to be that as we flip to the underside, there are no proper rolling wheels, which I know for some may not be the biggest deal in the world, but these are still toys, and that is arguably one of the biggest play features of an alt mode. So to see this absent once again is in all honesty a pretty big letdown. Racing through some vehicle mode size comparisons, on the right hand side is yet again the Combiner Wars version of Bonecrusher, which, to kind of go back to my earlier point, has proper rolling wheels. I always thought the main reason for an upgrade was to be a step up and not a step back, something which unfortunately again just doesn't seem to be the case here at all. Next up is the Studio Series 86 Commander Class Optimus Prime, Voyager Class Road Hauler, 86 movie Constructicon Scrapper, the go-to Ironhide, then finally again, 86 movie Deluxe Class Bumblebee. So, wrapping up on this review for the Transformers Studio Series Deluxe Class Bonecrusher, I'm going to be completely honest and say that for those of you who do own the previous Combiner Wars version, then right now this all-new Devastator really ain't looking to be that much of an improvement. There are just way too many things from a design standpoint that this guy could have and should have done better, the biggest being the forearms, and it's a shame because it really does pull down what otherwise could be a pretty solid figure. So at the end of the day, unless you don't own the previous Combiner Wars version, then right now I really don't see a need to upgrade to these Studio Series Constructicons, especially with arguably much better looking combiners on the horizon. I would love to know what you guys think of Bonecrusher down in the comment section below. As always, I thank you all so much for watching, and until my next review, I'll see you then. Transform and roll out!